Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Punch, Kick, Choke Chat. We appreciate you tuning in for what, for us in Toronto and in Michigan and in Kitchener, is the early edition at 5 p.m. Toronto time. We're so happy you joined us early for these sessions. It helps us facilitate the guests that we're starting to get from different countries, different time zones. Tonight, we've got two guests from over the Atlantic, which is just brilliant. We're so pleased and proud that this show is getting the kind of legs that put it transatlantic. And as we've had guests from Japan, Trans-Pacific, I mean, it's really a blessing to be able to connect with the martial arts community during this time and really any time across these distances. So I'm super grateful that you're here. My name's Sean Benson. I'm one of your hosts for Punch, Kick, Choke, Chat. Every week, I get the pleasure of introducing the man who on my screen is to my left, Sensei Nicholas Suino. He's an 8th Dan in Iaido, a 6th Dan in Japanese Ju-jutsu, a 6th Dan in Judo. And one little thing I just want to share that Sensei Suino, I don't even think I've ever shared with you, but he does a 12-hour event called The Crucible. And during that time, there's stand-up martial arts, there's judo, there's sword work, and then there's grappling. And when we did that a few years ago, 12 hours, you don't leave the room other than to go to the bathroom and eat a little, and you just work out. And at the end of it, you've lost 10 pounds of water weight. And I got introduced to ground grappling at that, and I got really into it. I liked that day. So I went and joined a jiu-jitsu club, and I remember stumbling into the blue belt and above room about 3 weeks after I joined and grappling with someone. And I didn't know what I was doing, but Sensei Suino had shown us what, Sensei, 2.5 hours worth of stuff. And one of the black belts pulled me aside. He goes, so you've obviously done this for a while. So where did you learn all this? And so, well, I really haven't. I did one little seminar. He goes, no, look, this isn't seminars worth. And it was seminars worth. So all I want to say, Sensei Suino, is that in 2.5 hours, you taught me at the very least enough that a master looked at me and went, where'd you learn all this, kid? And it was like, well, aside from having a fighter's mind, it's from one man named Sensei Suino in about 2.5 hours. So thanks for that, by the way. I've never shared that with you.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that story. It's such. I'll be reaching out to you to get a testimonial for the website. That experience is so wonderful, and I think everybody who's deeply involved in martial arts can appreciate that. When you do these long, intense training sessions, at some point, all the intellectual stuff that's in the way of being good at martial arts finally leaves, and you can really learn at a high rate of speed. And that's what the whole Crucible experience is about. Thanks so much for that, Sean. I know we've chatted about it a little bit. You haven't said that before. Thank you so much. It falls to me when we do these shows to introduce Randy Dauphin, who's on the other side of Sean on my screen. Randy is a high-ranking karate martial artist. He's high-ranking in Iaido. He is multi-time world champion, not only in fighting, but in forms as well. He's devoted his life to martial arts and always puts the welfare of martial arts and his association first, which is an incredible thing for somebody in this day and age. It's something I tremendously respect him for. And he's also an absolutely insane person when it comes to working out. There's a few of us in this community that devise these ridiculous workouts, sometimes with others. Sometimes we'll just get inspired on a Sunday or something and do an hour and a half of insanity. And then we'll post it on the whiteboard and send it to one another. And usually when Randy posts something, it'll be, only slightly exaggerating, 8 million deadlifts with 250 pounds, 475,000, squats, 18 kata, and, running 150 miles in an hour and a half. It's just insane stuff, but it's so inspiring and motivating to see that. There's a little competitiveness about it, but there's also just inspiration. And then sometimes we end up in the same place at the same time, and we'll do those workouts together. And that's really a wonderful experience. Randy, it's great to see you as always. That's what I got, and take it away.
That's great, Sensei. Yeah, that brings up so many thoughts. I have this new kettlebell grinder, which is super hard to do. It takes about 45 or 50 minutes. And I made it more interesting by doing, for every rep you do at the kettlebell, you do 10 skips with a skipping rope. So in the end, you end up like moving a couple of tons and jumping rope about like 4,000 or 5,000 times. And you get pretty sweaty. And the next day you feel a little bit stiff and sore. But yeah, I like that you brought up the Crucible as well, Sean, because I'll tell you, the first time I went, I really loved it. And for me with Sensei Suino, one of the things that I often say is, for me in my dojo, I'm very guarded about who teaches my students. I don't just let anybody in here to teach my students. And if you get the chance to stand in front of somebody else's students and teach them, you should be really proud. And at the second Crucible, Sensei Suino let me be one of the instructors for the striking portion of it. And that was a moment I was really proud that he gave me that opportunity to be in front of his students, and that he saw enough value in what I was doing that he would let me teach his students. So that was a thought that I had, and thanks for that, Sensei Suino. And those things you said when you talked about, I put the art first and my association and my students and then me. Well, I just quite frankly learned those things from Sensei Legacy and from you, right? So it's easy to be a student under you and Sensei Legacy and take credit for doing things that you guys have already done for a number of decades. So Sensei Legacy is not here tonight. He's not feeling well. He's under the weather. It's not COVID-19 related. So I just want to put that out there for sure. He's just struggling with a really bad migraine headache and can't, if you've ever suffered from those, you know that vision and speech sometimes becomes difficult when you have them. And I know Shike, Paul Masters and Sensei Lee Masters know about that. Maybe they could have helped them because they're osteopaths, right? But I just want to still say a couple words about Sensei Legacy. He's a 10th degree black belt. He was awarded that by his teacher, Anthony Sandoval. He's a member of the Canadian Black Belt Hall of Fame. He's an author, as is Sensei Suino. And he's been a student of some of the most prominent martial artists around, pioneers, Harold Warden being one of them, Benny Allen being another one, Richard Kim, and he's still a student of Anthony Sandoval. So I'm not going to get into all the stuff, but one of the things that occurred to me, and I'll look to Sean to be nodding his head, it's something we don't have to talk about with Sensei Lacy, but the guy is hilarious. He's so much fun to be around. Like when you're around him, he's so funny. I don't think I've laughed with anybody more than I've laughed with Sensei Legacy. And I'm not going to get into the specifics about what we laugh about because some of it's really not politically correct or appropriate. But man, do we ever laugh. I mean, I've laughed with Sensei Legacy in ways where I had to get up and walk out of the room because my guts were hurting so bad that the next day it felt like you had an abdominal workout. So, and I think that's also part of having a good relationship with a teacher is being able to laugh with them, cry with them, train with them, sweat with them, bleed under them, trust them. And I definitely appreciate the fact that Sensei Legacy is my teacher. Tonight, it's my pleasure and honor to introduce Shike Paul Masters and Sensei Lee Masters. As I mentioned, both osteopaths, like father and son tradition. Like I love this, right? My daughter does martial arts too. I love this, that we have this father and son tradition, both osteopaths. And I believe Shike Paul, you have a book coming out soon too, right? Like I mentioned that, but I believe you have one coming out. I'm going to read some things here and I might butcher this and I'm sorry if I do. Shike Paul Masters was a student of the late Kobuta Toshihiro, master teacher and branch head of Tenjin Shinyo Ryu. He was awarded his Menkyo Kaiden license of full transmission on December 10th, 2011. On the death of his teacher, he became the fourth branch line inheritor, along with Kubota Nobuhiro, the son of Kobuta Toshihiro, holding a letter of authority as well as being passed on the Ishi Shoden, a secret transmission passed on from father to son. In normal events, the head of a Ryugi would pass on these secret teachings to a blood relative who is trained in the Ryugi. In the event that the head of the Ryugi had no children of his own, he could adopt, as was the case with Iso Masato Omoto, the third generation successor, or pass on these teachings to a person who he has awarded the Menkyo Kaiden. It was the decision of both Kobuta Toshihiro and his son, heir apparent Kobuta Nobuhiro, to pass on the Ishi Shoden to Paul Masters, which is a rarity in traditional martial arts. I can't say how rare it actually is. I'm a historian. I went to school for history. It's super rare. It was the wish of his late teacher that he should convey the correct Tenjin Shinryu throughout the international community. It is with this spirit in mind that he has written this book in part, which is where I'm pulling this from his book. My thoughts on this, I don't mean to like make light of this. I'm trying to relate it, but this is some real Jean-Claude Van Damme Bloodsport Kumite shit. Like when you're reading this stuff, this is what it is, like this father to son transmission. We talked last Saturday, and I could tell straight off that I liked both of these people. They're really nice people, but the other thing is they're really serious about what they're doing. They're super committed to it. If you're on this call, I guarantee you're not a Menkyo Kaiden holder unless you're Paul or Lee Masters. I can guarantee that you're somehow in the Dan and Q rank system, and that's okay too. But when you say this bloodline, father to son, talking to someone like this is like stepping back in time, and it's extremely rare. We're talking to 2 Menkyo Kaiden recipients, 2, not 1. It's crazy. This is not something that the average person could or will ever achieve. It's not going to happen. In addition to the dedication and technical proficiency, it's my belief that I'm not a Menkyo Kaiden holder. So when I say this is just my opinion and my belief, that you have to demonstrate outstanding strength of spirit and character in order to receive something like this. Outstanding. And truly trust plays a huge part. The trust of your teacher plays the most huge part in receiving something like this. And again, not to make light of this, but in today's day and age, I often think about Shike Masters and him showing up at a seminar and people saying, well, what's your rank? And he says, well, I'm a Menkyo Kaiden holder. And I just like to picture the bewildered look on the face of the person who's looking at him, trying to figure out what in the hell that is. And I am so excited to talk to the 2 of you tonight. I am so excited to talk to you. And I'm just going to pass it over to Sensei Suino to provide a little more context.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add, but you know, I've been as of this year, I've now been involved in martial arts for 53 years. And I've traveled all over the world. I've taught thousands of people. I've trained with many of the most famous martial art instructors on the planet. And I know 3 Menkyo Kaiden, Phil Relnick, Paul Masters, and Lee Masters. So that will underscore the rarity. And not only that, but those are 3 who are not Japanese. And that's kind of amazing because there are many great relationships between Japanese instructors and non-Japanese students, but to reach that level of trust is truly exceptional. So I too am very excited about today. And as Randy also alluded to, one of the things that we seek when we set up this show not only is a lifetime commitment to martial arts and ability to articulate, but we are hoping to meet good people as well. And I think as those of you who sit through this program and listen to the dialogue will see that we're definitely in that territory tonight. So having said that, I'm going to kick it back to Sean just to tee this up, and then it goes forward from there.
Yeah, thanks, Sensei Suino. Thanks, Sensei Dauphin. And gentlemen, just a couple housekeeping notes for the people watching. First off, because the time's a little bit earlier, there's no chance any of us are going to swear or say anything you don't like. I'm fucking kidding. We're going to say whatever we like, and you can edit it out in your own mind if you don't like it, or you can have your parents record it on a loop and bleep it. The point is that this is adults having a chat, and we're all just privy to each other's company. So there's no censorship. There's no editing going to happen. And the only way it ever would is if one of our guests said, can we edit that out of the YouTube clip, which we would happily do, because this is for them, not for us. For you as the viewer as well, the fact that you've tuned in live is so exciting to us, and you get to ask us questions. And I love that we're on such a roll. We've already got some questions that have come in, which I appreciate that we've got return guests who know how this works. If you're newer or you've forgotten, at the bottom, there's a chat button, and that way you can feather through to Robert Schlumsky, who so ably runs this most weeks, one of our crew. He's with us tonight, and he'll feather us through the good questions, and the bad questions will get tossed into the recycle bin, and we'll never see them. So Shike and Sensei, it is such a privilege to be chatting with you for all the reasons that have been said. And one of the things I like to ask our guests, how do you like hearing that introduction about yourself?
Very nice introduction. Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, it's unusual to get such praise, to be honest. Many people, as it's just been said, many people don't understand the rank of Menkyo Kaiden. So yeah, it's nice to receive that. Thank you.
Indeed, Sensei Lee.
And equally humbling as well.
Yeah.
And
I
think of myself like as up here. This is the whole thing. So when people start talking like that, it's makes me feel a little bit puffed up.
But just listening to also you guys' qualifications, you know, Menkyo Kaiden is not above the qualifications that you have. It's just a different ranking system. That's all it is. There are 5 certifications in our Rugi. So we go from Shodan, Chudan, Mokuroku, Menkyo Kaiden. So it's 5 rankings and certifications. But Tenjin Shinyo has never used a Q-Dan ranking system.
So by the way, as we go through the evening and I ask questions, assume they're for both of you, and feel free to argue it out or just chip in or step on me or any of us hosts as you each get your chance to express yourselves. So why don't we start there? Why don't we start with you talking us through a little bit of what those ranks mean, so that the listeners who are maybe more karate based, or which a lot of us are, will understand the parallels.
Okay. Do you want to? Or okay, so the first strange thing I'm going to tell you is that I don't hold a Shodan or Shoden license, which is quite strange, being in Menkyo Kaiden. The reason being is because when I met Kubota Sensei, I was already quite high ranking in Ju-jutsu, and I had some downgrades in karate, etc. And when I first went to Japan to train under him, he said to me, I'm not going to bother with the Shodan syllabus. I already showed you in Sweden. We're going to move on to the Chuden. And he said, it's too embarrassing for me to teach you. The Shodan is the keyhorn, the basics of our system. So that's a strange thing not to have the Shodan. But the Shodan is the first fundamental techniques. It's made up of 12 Teihadoki, and then 10 Shodan Idori and 10 Shodan Tachiai. Teihadoki can mean 2 things. It can mean the freeing of a grip, or it can mean fundamental technique. So they are the very, very basic. And when you're a beginner, you stand at what we say, stand at the gate entrance. You're not coming through the gate yet. And you have to learn the Teihadoki. And the Teihadoki is a little bit like initiation. Yeah. And so you're kind of vetted, and you're looked at by the senseis. You're looked at even by the Monte, the students, and to whether you're going to be accepted into the Rugi. It's not a natural acceptance. When you've passed the Teihadoki and the Tenyuka International, you're then expected to give the Kishimonji, which is a oath to the Rugi, which in olden times was signed by Kepen, blood seal. We don't go as far as that, but what we do is get them to put the thumb into a Hanko ink, a stamp ink pad, and then sign with that. So it's sort of as though you are signing in blood. It's a very important thing, Kepan, because you're saying that you will stick to the rules of the rugi. You won't pass on any teaching until you're allowed to, and so forth. Chuden, just going back, the Shoden techniques are very, very basic. They have some very, very, how can we say, heavy nagiwaza throwing techniques. You have to learn your ukemiwaza very well to be able to accept them. And then when you go to the middle transmission, Chuden, or and then you learn the techniques, which is the Chudan stage, middle stage, they become more combative. And there is 14 Idori and 14 Tachiai. Idori are kneeling techniques, and Tachiai are called standing techniques. And then once you've learnt them, and everyone is graded differently in a Kobudo Rugi, you know, you're not necessarily the greatest person in the Keikoba or dojo, but if you're training constantly and you're progressing and you're improving in your own self, that's a sign for when you will be awarded your certification. You have to know the techniques inside out. And when I talk of techniques, I'm talking more of kata form. Two-man kata, not solo kata, two-man. It's all two-man in Tenjin. And when we say 14 Idori kata, there is several techniques maybe in one kata, and many principles that one has to learn, and many concepts in those kata. Then we go to the third license, which is called the Mokoroku, which means catalog. And in this license, you're learning the 20 Naga stay. They are quite serious techniques, designed all from standing position. And once you learn the one-to-one single, then you also learn how to apply those to multiple attackers. And you also learn the first Kapo technique of the Rugi.
Capo is the revival techniques. So if someone is hit unconscious, strangled unconscious, thrown down unconscious, normally me, because I'm normally Kizuki.
Yeah, so, and originally when in Japan, we were also introduced at that level to randori techniques. And so Kubota Sensei wrote an article in Japan where he listed 18 techniques. And many people think that there's only 18 randori techniques in Tenjin, but that's not true. The article really was listing those 18 techniques that where judo, you can see the comparison of where judo came from. So in the Tenyuka International, I made a decision that we would learn randori right from the beginning. So we introduced to our students at the Shoden level. And then, so Mokoroku is a very high level in our system. It means also that it's a license pending to teach. And the Menkyo license, the fourth certification, is the license giving permission to teach. So you're only allowed to teach at Menkyo level. And we have two systems. You can run a Kenkyukai, sorry. We get a study group. So you're allowed to run a study group, even if you're a Shoden, you come maybe to the Hombu dojo, you learn, you go away, and maybe 3 or 4, 5, 6 of you who are studying Tenjin, trained together. That's what we call a Kenkyukai study group. But the Menkyo is the license giving permission to teach. And of course, then the Menkyo Kaiden is the license of full transmission.
So thank you. By the way, thank you for that. That was absolutely fascinating to me, truly. To just listen to you explain that, I'm just like, I forget we're doing an interview here sometimes because I'm just listening and learning. I really appreciate that. Sensei Suino, you as a Japanese jiu-jitsu practitioner, I know that you're recognized with Dan ranks. So where do you gentlemen meet and diverge in terms of that just way of learning and way of teaching?
Well, I mean, just to address the difference in the ranking systems, what I study, Nihon Jiu-Jitsu, is really a modern compendium of techniques. Sato Shizuya Sensei created that in the post-World War II Kodokan environment. So it's not an old style such as you would expect a Kaiden system to be imposed on. Along with Kano and others, our teacher, decided to follow the Dan system, the Q and Dan system.
Yep.
But one of the reasons is it's really a modern form of jiu-jitsu. It's not a historic family system.
And when you were learning and coming up, were you familiar with the Tenjin Shinyo Ryu?
No, I didn't really know anything about it until I first had contact with the masters through the Shudokan Martial Arts Association. Then I started looking into it a little bit.
Thanks, Sensei. So gentlemen, let's go back then. I appreciate that because that really gives me context, and I think a lot of our viewers. Let's go back. What Shike brought you into your first dojo, and what kept you there? How was it growing up, and what made you stumble into a martial arts life?
That's me. Yeah. Firstly, I've been in martial arts for over 50 years. And I started my martial arts journey in judo, but I didn't, I was only Q ranked. I then went on to study karate, basically Yoshi-Kan's system of Minoru Mochizuki, because my teacher then was Vernon Bell Sensei, who studied under studied in Henri Ple's dojo and received a Nidan from the Shizuoka dojo in Japan, which was Minoru Mochizuki's original dojo. And so I studied Yoshi-Kan. I've also studied Goju-Ryu, and I was graded 6th Dan in Goshin Jitsu, which is a kind of modern style jiu-jitsu. And I went to America on holiday and many years ago, and I found a book in a bookstore in Sedona, and it said there was a chapter in there on Tenjin Shinyo that was actually written by Meek Scoss, and he more or less got the information from my sensei Kubota, who at the time wasn't my sensei, but and so I thought I was doing Tenjin Shinyo Jiu-Jitsu in England. This is what my teacher told me, but it wasn't really. It was more of a mixed jiu-jitsu system. And so I was quite surprised when I read this chapter. And cut a long story short, I gave up all my other martial arts gradings, and I decided to start again. And I wrote to Kubota Sensei through I was running a children's clinic, and I wasn't taking any fees for these. These were poor kids that had cerebral palsy and all sorts of different problems. And so as an osteopath, I felt, perhaps osteopathy could give them some benefit, but I didn't know what benefit. So I didn't want to charge for that service. And I was talking to one of the kids' fathers who worked in Japan. he came back and forth. And I was telling him that I want to contact this Ju-jutsu master. And he said, well, if you write a letter, I will take it back to Japan, get one of my colleagues in the office to translate it into Japanese and then send it on, which that's what happened.
Wow.
I didn't receive anything for about 3 months. And I thought, well, okay, he's not going to reply. And then suddenly I received this letter saying that I'm giving a course in Sweden. Please, would you come over and I will teach you some Tenjin Shinyo. And I got to Sweden, I got to the hotel. I was parking the car and Mrs. Sensei, we call Mrs. Sensei my wife, she was checking in and they said, oh, there's a fax here for your husband. And she came running out and she said, there's a fax here from Kubota Sensei. You were invited to dinner this evening in about half an hour's time. So I quickly got myself together and got to this house where we were having dinner, and through a young English chap who was studying with Kubota at the time, he spoke fluent Japanese. I hardly spoke any Japanese whatsoever. And I sat next to Kubota Sensei and he asked me constantly questions on my martial arts experience and so forth. And at the end of the dinner, he invited me to Japan to train with him.
So let me just ask you before we get to Sensei Lee's version of the same story, which is, how many years were you in the martial arts and what was so appealing about what you'd encountered about this man's work that you were willing to set all the other stuff aside?
Yeah, it's just that I can't really answer that with a direct, definite answer to you.
Mm-hmm.
I just felt that this was my calling. That's all I can say, really. It just seemed right to do that.
And how long had you been in the martial arts at this point?
Let me work this out. I've been training 99. I've been in the martial arts since
30 something.
Yeah, 30 over about 36 years.
And then you found a calling after 36 years.
Yeah. I
love that. You know, Hanshi Legacy, who can't be on the call tonight, he does talk sometimes about you're not quite serious till you've been here about 30 years. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I'm not at 30 years, I'm at 28. And when I think of that and I hear you talk about that, you know, what a beautiful thing. Like it took that long, even though you were training the whole time, and then you get a calling. I mean, who gets a calling in their life? And it obviously was correct. Thanks for that. Sensei Lee, what about you? You know, being the child of a martial artist, and I mean, did you have any choice in the matter, or was it just foregone?
I did, actually, I did. One of the things that my father has left out when he received the letter is that he gave the letter to try and get it translated, and it was in old Japanese. So some of it, there was like, this took ages, you know, and pretty much I think that set a precedence in the fact that we was going down a completely different avenue. Myself, I started when I was 13, so that was unfortunately 35 years ago. I kept asking my father to teach me karate, and I liked scrapping at school a little bit too much, so he made me wait. And then I finally, he said, right, if you're serious, let's go down to the martial arts store. So I bought myself a gi, put on my white belt, and he gave me a book by Nakayama of the JKA, Dynamic Karate. He said, learn these stances. And then I was outside on my own. And I'm like, okay. And that was the first of many, many tests like that, you know. I always, my father's got some various trophies from his karate days, and I always wanted to try and emulate or you know, try and beat him actually in getting more was
Is this news? Are we gonna?
well,
I used to tell him to, Lee, switch that light out. Now I say, Lee, would you please switch that light?
That's awesome.
So then I trained for a little while in the Shotokan, and then we went down the Goju-ryu route, and trained in Goju-ryu for 10 years. Got to second dan, knee dan in Goju-ryu. Had the honor as well as with being graded by Bell Sensei, my father's original sensei. So that was nice because he was the founder of British karate. Mm-hmm. So back in 1957, I think it was. Mm-hmm. So even then, one of the things that I always remember about that was Bell Sensei was around our house, my father's house, and we was training with him, and then he asked me to show him different kata, and then he asked me to explain what I was doing. So he didn't want me necessarily to do the bunkai, but just to explain to him why I was doing a Nippon Ken or something of similar nature. And he then sort of turned to my father and he said, have you taught him this? And he said, yes, but he's also learned a lot from studying himself. Because one of the things that my father's always taught me is always ask why. Don't just take it on board. You have to take it on board initially when you're learning kata and things like that. But when you break out, then you need to ask why you're doing these things. So we went on and we was doing the Ju-jutsu as well at the same time. And then we finally went to Sweden. And it was a horrible night. It was pouring down with rain. And I was staying, my wife is Swedish, and that's why I'm in Sweden now as well. So I was staying at my wife's parents while my father went off and had this sneaky meal with our sensei. Well, I had to have it with the mother-in-law, so so yeah, and that's it really. And it's I've always been my father's ukemi, or the receiver of the technique, and we've done many a demonstration and seminar together. I've been thrown into various wooden floors in Japan. They don't believe in mats and these demonstrations. Yeah.
So I'd love for you to chat, but also Sensei Dauphin for you to chip in, and then we'll go back to a couple questions we already have coming in. But the dynamics of being a parent and child in the martial arts, and how you not just separate, but you're training a certain way, Sensei Lee, and then he goes, by the way, we're going with this new guy now. And you're like, cool, so am I, or you think about that for yourself? And Sensei Dauphin, how do you navigate that with your children?
Horribly. My son, I feel like I failed him miserably as a karate teacher, because at that point when I was teaching him karate, he was there in the beginning. He's a 5-year-old kid, and I didn't really want him to be there because I was still about what I was trying to achieve. I wasn't really a teacher trying to teach people at that point. When Sid came along, she was better, but it's really hard with your own kids to walk that line between well, I think it's maybe impossible. You just can't treat them like everybody else, right? And so then you fall into you're too hard on them. You make them do way more than anybody else. Like Sammy, my youngest one, was a yellow belt for, I think, 4 years. It was like the joke of the dojo, right? Black belts here, like Dave Fowler had to come to me and say, Sensei, I think you need to grade Sammy to a yellow belt. You need to get her from her yellow belt to her green belt. So I don't know. It's a combination of neglect, ignore, tough love, high standards, making them achieve more, but not helping them as much as you would help somebody else achieve the same thing.
Thanks, Sensei. And CK and Sensei, do you have similar experience? I see you raising your hand a bit there,
Yeah.
Sensei Lee.
Very much so.
I'd just like to say, Sean, also that I have another son, a younger Anthony, and he's also followed me in Tenjin Shinyo. He's a Mokoroku, and he's also followed us in the practice. So I'm blessed, really blessed.
Yeah.
Even with osteopathy, he's the same with osteopathy as he is with martial arts. So again, one of the things is he pushes you and he pushes you and pushes you. So a bit like Randy was saying, so you sort of end up being this long distance white belt, and then all of a sudden you're in a black belt class or something like that. And it was the same with me with my my osteopathy as well. So in the end, some of my lecturers, I was actually teaching them techniques. And the same with my brother. He done exactly the same. Lecturers were coming up to him going, "How did you just do that?" And it's because, again, the whole questioning of why. You know, this is the major teaching, because I generally feel that if he doesn't know anything about, or some bit about osteopathy, if he doesn't know about it, it normally means it's not worth knowing about. You know, so I go, "What do you think about this?" And he'd go, "No, I don't know." You know, and it normally means because the techniques that he does again of that higher nature, you see. So
By the way, just I'd love for you before we get to our next question. So I've been doing osteopathy as like monthly, if not every 6 or 8 weeks, for easily over a decade, if not longer. And for myself, it's the best form of healing I've found when I don't have an acute physio-based injury, more so than massage, more so than Reiki or any other types of things. So do you maybe just want to take just a minute and tell everybody watching what the osteopathy is? Because I swear by it. The soft tissue massage feels really good for an hour. The osteopathy radiates throughout my body structurally for weeks.
well, generally the osteopathy for me is about harmonizing the body. So we have the two autonomic nervous systems, or the autonomic nervous system, parasympathetic and the sympathetic, and they create this balance, the yin and yang, if you like. And osteopathy is there to actually recreate that equilibrium. So it's not, you know, a lot of people go, "Oh, I went to my osteopath because I got a bad back." But a bad back is an expression from the body saying, "I've got some problems in here." Maybe, you know, sometimes you have just a bad back. So, you know, it's again, osteopathy is a philosophy. And there is, to me, there is no difference between osteopathy and Ju-jutsu. Very much so, particularly as you get in the higher levels of Ju-jutsu. Certainly in Tenjin Shinyo, it's exactly the same.
In Tenjin Shinyo, we have what is called Sakotsu. It means bone manipulation, if you like, or the art of bone manipulation. Very similar. Some of the techniques are very similar to osteopathic techniques. But as Lee said, osteopathy is not a technique. It's not just a matter of cracking a back or a neck. There's a philosophy behind it, and it's to balance the physiology of the patient to get better function to that patient.
Thanks, gentlemen. Yeah, that really matches my experience, and also it really feels like a minimal effort, maximal result kind of thing, too. Sensei Dauphin?
Yeah, I just want to say, interestingly, my girlfriend and my daughter, Christine and Cheyenne, both go to an osteopath. And at the beginning of this, she sent me a text message and said, "I love the fact that they're both osteopaths." So she's interested, she's connected to this because of that.
That's awesome. So we'll jump to our first question from Al Panakia, and his question reads, any insights into the relationship with Tenshin Shinyo Ryu and judo techniques, kata, etc.? Fukuda Keiko had a picture of her grandfather, Fukuda Hakanosuke, on one wall and Kano on the other wall. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, Fukuda Hachinosuke was the teacher of Kano Sensei. Kano Sensei studied with him for several years, and in fact, at times would be the teacher for the dojo. It was apparently not very well attended. There was only several students, but that's quite normal in the Kodo. We're not we're not very commercial. We don't have hundreds of students. And so when Fukuda died, Kano then went to study with the third generation head of Tenjin Shinoru, Izo Mazutomo. So Kano was, as everyone knows, founded Kodokan Judo, but he obviously took the techniques of Tenjin Shinyo and modified them in some respects, but you can still see the reality of judo techniques. We can see, when a judo practitioner does certain techniques, we know where that's come from. And there are, quite a few techniques that do come from that, from Tenjin Shinyo. Also, there is the kata, Itsusu no kata, which is the form of five. Form of five. We call it the Gohon Kuden, and it's the last teaching in Tenjin Shinyo. I find it strange, in some reference books on judo, they say that Kano created these kata. Well, that's not quite true, actually. They come from Tenjin Shinyo. So that's a strange thing. But they are the last teaching. And as I understand it, in judo, they are the Yudansha, higher Yudansha, learn this kata as well. So I've looked at the judo Itsusu no kata. It's now modified to what we do. There are differences, subtle differences. But my sensei, Kubota sensei, actually was a 7th Dan Kodokan judo practitioner. He did, as I understand it, some courses at the Kodokan, teaching or lecturing on the Itsusu no kata. As I said, we call it the Gohon Kuden kata. And also he was commissioned by the Kodokan to teach Kappo, Katsu, resuscitation, to the higher Yudansha. So there are many techniques like Seoi Nagi, for example, the shoulder throwing judo. They do it with the natural arm. That means the arm is natural in its shape as you take over. But in Tenjin Shinyo, we do it as a gyakute. We reverse, so we're locking here as we take over. The idea is, of course, to break the arm.
Not tonight.
Yeah,
I need it for the clinic tomorrow.
Yeah, I still want him working tomorrow. So
you guys are starting something here. We're gonna have to have every person we interview have an uke on so that they can do things to them.
Just get out of my head since I just thought that. I was like, can we just do this?
Yeah.
Can we just get a lesson?
So there's throwing techniques from Tenjin Shinyo in judo, strangulation techniques like Hadaka Jimi, Zukomi Jimi. As I understand it, a lot of these techniques now are not allowed in judo competition. Zukomi Jimmy, I don't think is allowed. Nick might correct me there, but and also there's a throwing technique called kane basame, or kane basame, which is the pincer throw, the crab throw with the legs. That was banned from judo. I can't remember the date exactly, but that was banned because a judo player got his leg severely broken with that technique. So, but that originated from Tenjin Shinyo actually. And it's a very, very dangerous technique. If the practitioner, has practiced over and over and over again with that certain technique and has made it effective, it's a very effective martial art technique, no matter what you practice. Whether you practice karate, you could easily put that into the karate repertoire, mixed martial art, and so forth.
Allowed in mixed martial art.
I've not seen it done in mixed martial arts, I have to say, but a lot of the techniques in mixed martial arts, what's the one, Yudigami, what do they call it? Kimura. I mean, it's basically Yudigami in Tenjin Shinyo.
Well, so this seems like a great opportunity to crack something open that I'm always interested in. And Sensei Suino, I'd really like you to chip in as you see fit. So you've got Higuro Kano learning the art you're doing that Sensei Suino calls an old style of jiu-jitsu, because it predates in many ways the judo, which is much more modern as far as we know it. Then you've got Mitsuyo Maeda, who goes down and shows the Gracies some stuff. And then even there it gets adapted much further and then follows its own lineage. So you've got these two lineages separating at that point, as far as we know. So I'd love for you just to discuss, because you mentioned, the Kimura as far as the MMA goes, as far as that's a Brazilian jiu-jitsu move, that's what it's called there. So where does that divergence matter? And where does the kata and the more classical aspect of the jiu-jitsu you all practice necessarily diverge from BJJ? And where does BJJ move things forward in a way that you admire?
Okay, so first of all, one of the things that we have within Tenjin Shinryu is we actually have a Shiayura technique, which is higher levels, and we have Hadaka-jime is within there, and there's a set of techniques that there's 3 kata that we do, which we take the gi top off, so you only have your gi bottoms on. Ratai Dori, which means naked. So naked grip.
Mm-hmm.
So in a sense, when with the MMA stuff and the no gi and everything else, it was already being done in 1830s, 1840s. Some of the kata that originate within Tenjin Shinryu comes from Yoshinryu, and that's 400 years old plus. Mm-hmm. So how I see things have developed from then is because they've been repackaged for the audience. Okay, so you can't sell the same shit from say the English to the Swedish. Sorry, my students who are watching this, because the mindsets are different. BJJ, you have this overemphasis of the groundwork, and I personally think this is because of the capoeira link that was already down there. So the capoeira guys probably, and don't blast me, BJJ guys, but they probably then went to do the jiu-jitsu, got into some kind of grappling situation and thought, well, I'm already down here. I know my shit from capoeira. And then it's sort of emphasized from there, because the Kimura, for example, that my father was talking about, which is Udigurami, we do stand up. Mm. So someone attacks you, you block, and then you lock it down, and then pull in to throw. Obviously in groundwork, you have the same mechanics, but you're on the ground, either side mount normally. So that's how I feel, you know, and you can see some of the books in the Meiji period, which is, you're talking 1868 onwards. That's when there was a cutoff line for Koru. And there's some books that were produced by various people, and they have Tenjin Shinyo techniques in with a sword, but in the modern Western style clothing. So it's a bit like the stuff that I teach military guys. I don't teach them the formality. I just teach them how to get there and the end result, because they don't need that much.
That's awesome. Sensei Suino, any thoughts on that as well, that divergence and where it lives?
My gosh, there's so much to talk about. We're not even going to scratch the surface, but if we stay with the groundwork, I think something that Lee said resonates with me. You know, as they say, there's nothing new under the sun. It's true that the Brazilians have really evolved this, but if you go back and you look at what they now call Kosen Judo, or if you follow the Kashiwazaki family, it looks like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's just that fell out of favor and is practiced kind of as a niche art over in Japan now. And it's been overwhelmed by the sport judo, the Kodokan world. So, you know, you start digging and you see that, you know, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is amazing, but it's not entirely new if you look at the old, right? Right, Lee? You've probably seen some of this.
Absolutely, absolutely.
One of the biggest divergences between judo and Tenjin Shinyo is atemi waza. With most of the Tenjin Shinyo practitioners went over to Kodokan Judo because of the political power that Kodokan had, and to get a downgrade, they would have to do Randori, but Randori with Kodokan rules, and this eliminated atemi waza. So in a sense, and eliminated certain techniques. So in a sense, a lot of the Tenjin Shinyo masters were at a little bit of a disadvantage there. This has been recorded in several articles that I've actually read in the history of Tenjin Shinyo. So one of the biggest divergences, as I see it, is the, don't get me wrong, I mean, I know some very, very tough judo players that, you know, I would think twice about mixing up with, having a tangle with. But the biggest divergence I see is the atemi waza taken out by the Kodokan. It gradually became lost. No longer, there was no longer an interest in atemi waza, or what we call shinoati or sapojutsu. So, as I said, that's one of the biggest divergences that I can see. Mixed martial arts, you know, again, there's some, I mean, they're professional fighters, most of these guys. And I can see many Tenjin Shinyo techniques there. The striking's different, of course, because it's mainly boxing, strikes and so forth. But I can see many of the Tenjin Shinyo grappling techniques. And some of the books Lee was talking about, or there's one particular book that represents Tenjin Shinyo, and people think that it is the Bible of Tenjin Shinyo. It's not. It's there's a lot missing from that book, which was written by Yoshida Chiharu and Izo Mazuyuki, the 5th generation of Tenjin. But there's so much missing out of that, and people try to copy from those books. And as I say to my students, what they're looking at is only a static representation. It's an artist's drawing. You know, Tenjin is not like that. No martial art is like it. You know, it's dynamic. As soon as contact is made, we're one of the most secret principles, but it's not secret really, is to off balance kazushi, to off balance the person. Kazushi means not only just to physically off balance the teki or opponent, but to off balance their mind as well. And soon as contact is made, that's what we try to achieve. Not always easy, but excuse me. In Tenjin Shinyo-Ru Randori, there was striking, throwing, joint locking, strangulation, and we would probably enter and strike first if we could, and then go into what is known today as a clinch or a grapple, and then use a throwing technique. But the strike was very important, very important.
I think,
thanks for that. Yep.
I was going to say, my father used the word teki, and teki means enemy. It doesn't mean opponent, it means enemy. So that's also one of the major differences I feel between Kuru and a lot of modern Gendai martial arts, is that you're looking at someone with the intent that they can be killing you. Now in judo, they try to preserve that a little bit in the kimi no kata, or shinken shobu,
As it was called,
which means live blade, win or lose. And that's a different mindset to, well, if I get thrown, I've lost a Rosario or a Nippon, as opposed to I've lost a life. And this happened around the same time as 1868, because that's when Kendo was coming in. So you do a strike, but it doesn't matter if you miss it, because you can then start again because they've only got a point. This is the same as karate with Isatsu Iken, I think is the correct, which means one strike, one kill, or Iken Isatsu, one strike, one kill. Sappo, that my father mentioned, means kill method. That is a literal translation for it. So that's again where I think a lot of Kodokan has lost that part.
If I could just intercede as well, another important principle in Tenjin Shinyo-Ru is what we call koboichi. It means attack and defense are the same, or as one. We in Tenjin Shinyo-Ru, we attack. There's very little gono-sen. There's very little like counter and then block and then counter. No, in Tenjin Shinyo-Ru, we attack. The first kata that one learns in the Shoden syllabus is Shin-no-kurai. And Shin-no-kurai means, basically it means you're in the winning position throughout the whole kata because you attack. So that again is a concept that I don't see too much of in martial arts. When I watch YouTube and I see a lot of gono-sen, a lot of ukiwaza and counter, but I don't see so much of the koboichi or sen no sen.
I love the smile I'm seeing on my sensei's face. And by the way, I'm not surprised that you're seeing those moves in the MMA. That's what made me think of that question, is that divergence down to the thing that became, the founding family of the UFC as we know it. So it makes a lot of sense that you're seeing that. Now, you also see these videos every once in a while, like karate, the original MMA, and it'll show a move from a kata, and then it'll show that being used to win an MMA fight. So Sensei Dauphin, I want to throw that back to you as a sort of reverse engineering. What are your thoughts on that as well, in terms of, killing karate from the early mid 1800s versus now, and what would contain more of the killing idea they're talking about, the not block and defend, and also any grappling aspects?
I think the thing I like about what they're talking about is kata. I like that they're talking about two-man kata. And I think one of the things in karate is that people do a lot of solo kata, but where our bunkai plays the role is when that becomes the two-person engage. And you know, Sean, I've said it to you. I think I said it on this show a while ago. Kata is actually the thing that teaches you how to deal with the seriousness that Sensei Lee Masters was talking about. Not getting a point, not a block and counter, but how to impose your will on somebody and overcome that situation. And the karate katas all have exactly what Shike said. You enter, you start with a strike, it moves to a clinch. The karate katas have a throw where it takes you to the ground, and there's often a finish. Where we stop in karate is we just don't go to the ground and start doing that. And I'm not saying we can't, it's just that's not something we regularly train. So
We don't train it either.
I'm sorry, Sensei?
With groundwork, a lot of the kata teaches you to get up. So you don't stay down there. If you go down there, you're up again. And you're not putting an arm lock on, you're dislocating an arm.
That would make sense with your system. In my mind, when I've always thought about the jiu-jitsu systems, I've thought about a battlefield application, not necessarily in an alley or a one-on-one situation. I've thought of you're literally out on a battlefield, and once you've dispatched one person, you must move to the next person. And it's probably not really good to be on your hands and knees or on your back trying to move to the next person at that point. I could be wrong about that, but that's when I think of your type of jiu-jitsu, that's what I think about.
When I've looked at, I studied karate, and mainly Yossikan and Shotokan based and Goju-ryu, but I read the Motobu, Choki Motobu, and his philosophy is totally different to Funakoshi Sensei. Funakoshi Sensei said there is no first attack in karate. Motobu said entirely different, so there's quite a big divergence in just those two sensei, and I found that very interesting because when I first learned karate, bunkai, for example, wasn't as widely practiced. We would be shown by the sensei, oh, this is a move. Sometimes some of the bunkai that was taught was ridiculous. Catching a bow in the hands, whereas for me, if someone's really trying to whack your head off with a bow, you're going to have a hard job to catch that like that. So, and this is one of the reasons why I felt with Tenjin Shinyo, like you just said, two-man form. And these days, bunkai has become very popular in karate, and I think it's a way, a way forward when bunkai was introduced, because and good bunkai, people have looked back and they've looked back at the old karate masters. I have some very old books in karate, and they look different to me. They're written in Japanese. There's two books particularly I had, very old books, that I haven't had translated yet. But they speak of Sennen Goroshi, 3-year kill, which is striking a person and they die within 3 years. That sounds a little bit far-fetched, but actual fact, when you look at it, if you hit someone in what we call suigetsu, the solar plexus, there's the celiac ganglion there that is like nerves radiating out from this center to all your organs in the body. And maybe a really forceful strike, maybe you may die because of organ dysfunction, and that takes a while to progress from one stage to the next. And these terms like Sennen Goroshi I think were taken from Ju-jutsu. I think karate took a lot of terms from Ju-jutsu, and not just terms, but principles.
I agree with that completely. So that kata you're talking about, I remember it's Niji Shiho, the kata Niji Shiho. And it's interesting because initially I thought, well, that's good to teach somebody to get their hands into the right spot, maybe like for the style, not necessarily the application. But for me personally, that's a throw. That's like a fireman's carry where you're gonna like dump them over your back to the other side of you. And we like to do bunkai practice chaotic here in this dojo, like in a more chaotic fashion.
What my father was just talking about as well, there's the link between osteopathy and martial arts. So because of training in anatomy and physiology, you know, osteopathy through manipulation of the spine will try to reverse that trauma to the celiac ganglion via the organs. So it puts a positive as opposed to a negative.
So we're going to jump. Oh, yep.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, which some people, the Senden Goroshi is would be described as Dimmak or what's the Japanese Kyusho points, but there's which has become very popular, obviously.
Tenjin Shinyo really only has around 18 vital points, or kyosho, which makes the system very easy, actually. You know, I see some systems have over 300 points, 500 points. Well, that's very difficult to memorize in a fight. But Tenjin, what I like about Tenjin Shinyo in this aspect is there are only 18 major kyosho points. And these are mainly forbidden points, as they were called.
Which maybe goes back to the 18 hands of Lohan in the Shaolin Temple and those 18 points, which it's funny because people think, oh, these are the 18 hands of Lohan is a kata, and it's no, like these are attack points. These aren't.
Well, it's interesting, and for when writing my book, I've been researching, and there's some answers I've found, but there's still a lot of questions that I can't answer. It's said that Tenjin Shinyo in the Tai Roku, which is called our Big Essential Record, it's a very important document. In fact, I've got it here.
Just there. You just got that there.
Just got that, yeah.
Just that. Just, you know, I got a Hardy Boys book next to me, and you got that.
I pulled out a scroll earlier on, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And it was like 1839, and he's like, "Oh, well,
whatever."
Yeah, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Before this gets away, Paul, did you just make reference to Seipai as we were talking about the Kyusho? Or Lee, did you?
18 hands, right?
Is there a relationship? Is the 18 hands relate to?
Well,
I mean, there's some vital
Nick,
points.
That's what I was just trying to say is Tenjin Shinyo is said from the Tai Roku, the thing I just showed, that Yoshinru, the founder of Yoshinru, Akiyama Shirobei Yoshitoki, went to China and learnt Zuku, thrust, and Keri kick. They say he only learned 3 techniques. I can't see that. And 3 techniques, fighting techniques, and 28 kappa or resuscitation techniques, which is completely, if you're learning a martial art, that's a little bit weird because, 3 techniques as opposed to 28 resuscitation techniques. So I've been searching and searching. What does these 3 techniques, what are these 3 techniques? Seipai Kata has 18 hands, there's 18 points, but there's also 3 internal styles, Xingyi, Bagua, Tai Chi. I've looked at the kata. Could it mean that the kata is the tiger hand, the crane, and the dragon? I can't answer completely, but maybe one day I'll be able to kick it up. I don't know. But it's, you know, I've looked at the karate systems like 18 hands, and the Bubishi talks about 36 points, this sort of thing. So yeah, it's something very interesting. It's really interesting.
You guys are killing me because I can't believe that we have 12 minutes left in this interview.
Really?
Because that's nuts. Because it's nuts. Now, we will go a minute or two long with your gentleman's permission, but that jumps me into this little document of mine. Oh, you got your scrolls. Well, I happen to have the 10 questions here. So I see your scrolls and I raise you the 10 questions, which is the questions we ask all of our guests. And we ask that as much as you want to expand on your answers, an impulsive answer is lovely. And I'll let each of you answer in turn. You can decide who goes first. What is the most effective move in your martial arts arsenal?
What is the most effective move in the martial arts arsenal? For me, there is no one effective move. For me, as my sensei, the last words he gave to me was that people who just have waza technique, they're not going to win a battle. You have to have the mind. And for me, the most important training of any martial art is training of the mind. And when I mean the mind, I mean toughness of the mind. You know, you can have 1,001 techniques, but if you've not trained the mind into those techniques, they're going to go out the window. All you're going to be worrying about is what's going to happen to you. You know, if you're under attack by multiple opponents or an armed opponent, it's got to be the mind first. So for me, my most favorite method of training is to try and train my mind.
Sensei Lee?
He beat me to it, but I will be a little bit more specific and more in the modern context. So to me, in our way of talking, the front mind or the beginning mind that we have in kata. So in today's world of combat and everything else, is situational awareness. So as Mr. Miyagi said, best defense, not be there. And we practice this in a formal way. So that, again, that would be because I don't like fighting, I don't like violence, because someone gets hurt. So the best thing is actually to not be there, isn't it?
To avoid.
Yeah. Who is the most influential martial artist in each of your lives?
Me?
My son, I'm very proud of. I'm proud of both my boys. Both have different individual qualities. Lee has never really, he's questioned me in techniques and what does this mean? He calls me Shike when we're in the dojo. That's it. And he's followed me, and he's now his own man. I like to think now that he's a Menkyo Kaiden. So now it's, you know, he's his own person. He makes his own philosophy. He's put some of the principles of Tenjin into military terms, and over in Sweden, he's taught tactical concepts of Tenjin Shinyo in the military. So yeah. So to answer your question, I'd like very much if Izo Matemon, our founder, was alive. That's who I would like to have really followed and trained with. I can only follow his principles, but there are some great martial artists out there, which I admire immensely. From mixed martial arts, I mean, I feel the Gracie family fantastic ability. When you look at their jiu-jutsu, they really started the thing. But there's also now some very good American fighters, of course, Japanese fighters, mixed martial arts fighters, some excellent fighters, as some judo sensei that I admire, and of course karate. There's a lot of people. I can't say one person. I think there's many people who have different minds, different ideas, concepts, and facets in the martial arts that one can learn from.
Wonderful. So that was the most influential martial artist in your lives, but you've segued nicely into the next question. Who's the most influential martial artist of all time and why?
Well, for me, Izo Matemon. And why is because the reason I show this again is this is the Tai-Roku, and not many people know this, but a lot of this is featured in the Fighting Spirit of Japan, written by E.J. Harrison. And he actually got his shodan in Tenjin Shinyo before he went on to do judo. And in his book, a lot of the Tai-Roku is actually explained in that book. As I say, not many martial artists realize that, but most martial artists, if they read that book and they read about the principles and concepts, that could be any martial art. So for me, Izo Matemon, but of course I'm biased in that. There's some great martial artists. I wouldn't like to single people out. There are some really good martial artists around.
Sensei Lee?
Yeah, I would go along with the same thing because of the teachings that we're being taught. Obviously, my father as well, because he's basically given me the same principles that are taught in Shinyo Kurai, which is never to give up, and there's always time to begin again. So this is, as he said earlier on, with giving up his sixth dan in modern jiu-jitsu to go over and train again. And I did exactly the same. I gave up my knee dan and went over there with a white belt on. So, and I think that takes a lot of courage, because you don't know where you're going when you've dropped everything. So yeah, my father.
If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you get there?
You've been a good boy and we'll look after you.
Yeah.
Well, that won't be said to me.
I'll meet you in the other place then.
Yeah. Probably you took your time, hopefully.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Your favorite film and TV martial artist?
My favorite film is Rocky. I love the Rocky films.
Legit.
Yeah.
Me at the moment, the John Wick films, because of my firearms training.
Yep.
Yeah. I could teach Keanu so many better techniques than what he's already doing.
I love it.
In case you're listening, Keanu.
Okay. So who is you've touched on this already, but the one martial artist, living or dead, that you'd like to train with for say an hour the most?
One martial artist, living or dead, that you like to train with. Maybe Izzo again, wouldn't it?
Well, yeah, I'm sorry again. But
Not at all.
It would be Izo Matemon. He was a martial artist from 15 years of age, and he just had, for me, a martial mind, a mind that, there's a story that I can remember that he was at his house and a neighbor came in and he was aggrieved about something, and he suddenly saw a sword rack, and he took the sword and he attacked his own Matemon with a downward slash of the sword, and Matemon was sitting on a cushion, and he was able to bring the cushion up and catch the sword. How true this is, I don't know. It may just be a legendary story or whatever, but the actual why behind how he was able to do that was because he never sat on the front of a cushion. He always sat on the back end of the cushion so that he could pull the cushion up.
Mm-hmm.
And we call that outside technique. In other words, it's not covered in the 124 kata of Tenjin Shinyo. It's out of the curriculum. Mm-hmm. But there are certain things that are taught out of the curriculum.
My personal one would be a couple of generations down would be Fukuda Hachinosuke, the teacher of Kaiden. Mainly for the fact because he was a randori guy. He taught a lot of randori. He taught a lot of sumo as well. He was ranked sumo wrestler. So I feel that from that side of things, and I would learn quite a lot.
If you could, yeah,
what he would have learned from Izzo Matemon. Hopefully, so
you're going to get it anyway.
Go one step further. Right?
Yeah, right. If everyone in the world, you could bestow upon them the greatest benefit you've gotten from martial arts, whether they train or not, what would it be?
Positive thinking, especially in today's world. You know, again, the Shinyo Kurai is all about keeping on top of things. And we have a teaching about having wood on water and going up and down with the flow. And even if you get pushed down, the wood comes bouncing back up. And I think that's a major importance that most people could do with, and most martial artists should also teach to their students.
Kurai means level, and the kanji for shin is mind or heart in Japanese. It's no difference, but it means keeping a level mind, basically. And as Lee explained, with the wood bobbing up and down in life, you know, no matter who we are in life, we get trials to test us. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter who you are. And sometimes these things can get on top of us, you know, like today with the COVID. You know, I know some people are really suffering mentally because of it. And we teach not only to martial artists, but to our patients. We teach the principle of Shinyo Kurai. Try to keep a level mind. When you go down, there's either two things. You just keep going down until you can't get back up. Or you go down, but no, this isn't going to beat me. I come back up. And that is the role of the Yukemi in Tenjin. He's down, but he's never beaten. He'll always try to fight back. So I think Shinyo Kurai is a wonderful kata. It's 400 years old. It comes from Yoshinru, and it teaches the principles of life, really.
Love that. And the last two questions for each of you come as one. Greatest achievement, greatest regret.
Greatest regret. Oh, Jesus.
Greatest regret is that I didn't know about Kodo and Kobudo. I would have liked to have been able to have studied it when I was younger. Yeah, that's my greatest regret. So greatest achievement is receiving the Menkyo Kaiden, but not only just that really means nothing. The greatest achievement was my sensei taking me and treating me like Ochi-san, uncle. That's what he said. He taught me the same as he was taught by his sensei Sakamoto Fusataro, 1-to-1. That's how he taught me, 1-to-1. We'd go in the Keiko bar 9 a.m. in the morning, and we wouldn't come out there till about 6 p.m. And in fact, I was scared sometimes to ask if I could go and get a drink. A lot of the time it was hot summer. You know, and the teaching they gave me was just teaching of waza or technique. It was the teaching of Shin, mind and heart.
Regrets, I haven't, because you learn from everything. And I was only saying to a patient yesterday who unfortunately was a captive in the Bosnian War, that if I was taken off this earth now, I'm more than happy. The achievements I've had over the years has far gone beyond my dreams. Being on things like this, actually, you know, some of the guys that you've had on here, I would never have dreamed this 35 years ago. So from that point of view, then no. Achievements, Menkyo Kaiden, and my family, really. So hopefully my boys and girl will follow in some kind of footstep that I put through to them as a dad.
Yeah, my regret is only in the martial art. It's not in life. In life, I've enjoyed life. I've achieved many things, and I feel blessed for that. So,
well, gentlemen, again, I can't believe this has been an hour and a half. I truly can't. I know that we're all going to touch on that in our closing remarks. So the way we like to end our show is we'll go around the horn, and everybody will just give some thoughts, and then other than some housekeeping, we'll give you two the last word to send everybody home. Sensei Suino, what do you want to say?
You know, I know it sounds like a cliche, but oh my gosh, we have to do this again. There's so many things to explore about the origins of modern martial arts and the path that they've taken, you know, from India, China, Japan, and the names of the things, you know, the systems we've talked about, the connections. There's, I'm almost speechless because there's just so much to dig into. One simple idea that really stayed with me is the wood on water. What a great analogy for life, and it reminds me of something I've learned to say that I think is in some way connected with the philosophy you've talked about. You know, in judo, the cliche is fall down 7, get up 8. And I've been thinking about that for 53 years. And when I was a kid, I thought that meant that you just had to be tough and get up. But 53 years later, I now realize that maybe a deeper meaning is that you can't possibly learn a martial art deeply if you omit the falling down part. The troubles and the travails of life are what teach us. And so that wood on water notion is, yes, it's greatly reassuring to know that the wood floats and it bobs up, but without the down, right, it's incomplete. So that just really resonated with me, and I wanted to share it. Thank you so much for being here tonight, you guys.
You know, thank you for inviting us.
You know, Nick, Heino got that from Fukuda.
That's why I want to talk some more.
Sensei Dofat?
Yeah, I always write all these notes, and I like to demonstrate that I've tried to learn some things while we were on this call, or experience some things. One thing that I really experienced that I really enjoy is the relationship between the two of you. It's lovely. It's amazing to see the two of you together. Even that right now makes me miss my children. I want to hug them more when I see the two of you together. But on that note, Shike, I like the fact that when you said that you went into your organization, I like that you talked about the whole beginning process was just an initiation. It was really just for people to judge you. It wasn't for you to prove necessarily. It was for them to get an eye on you and to see whether they wanted to let you in and whether they wanted to accept you into the Ryugi. I like that idea of a blood oath, and I want to share with you that our sensei makes us put our thumbprint on all of our black belt certificates, and he puts his thumbprint on the certificate with us.
Mhm. It's the same, yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
like what you said about Kabata Sensei, and that it took 3 months to get a response from him and a lot of effort to interpret that response. But you still ended up going and following through. You had that mental tenacity to figure that out and go forward. I've talked about this a lot lately, just in the last 3 or 4 months, and it's interesting that we're talking to the two of you. But I've talked about this. What if there was no rank? Who would still be left here now? I believe the two of you would still be left here. Like I believe the two of you, because you proved it. You gave your ranks up to go to another system. You just cast them aside, and they were high ranks too. It's not like you're like, oh, I gave my yellow belt up so I could go do this other thing, right? Like you gave up very high ranks. Sensei Lee, I like that your dad made you learn your stances, just gave you a book and said, kind of go figure it out on your own. I think it's super cool that you've always been your dad's uke. And I would say that that's probably one of the reasons why you're so good at the art. Being able to experience something over and over again allows you to apply it, I think, at a different level. I like these links to the history of judo and other martial arts. And I like this thinking of, if you have the right mindset and you're thinking the right way, in a real way, whether you're doing jiu-jitsu or karate or iaido or whatever, it all kind of ends up coming out the same in the minutia when you get down to it. I really like, Sensei Lee, when you started talking about BJJ and capoeira. I'm going to be pondering about that for a while. Those are very interesting thoughts on the history of that country and the martial arts there. Shike, you're just so knowledgeable about everything. Like you're the only person so far who's pulled out scrolls that has read them. And the other thing, not only have you not only read them, because we've had lots of people on this that have been very intelligent, factual. Oh, 1868, Meiji Restoration, 1922, Funakoshi went to Japan. But the one difference I would say is that you thought very deeply about the why. You've thought very deeply about why these things happened. Why was this book written? Why does this technique work? And yeah, Sensei Lee, I liked when you talked about the basically not a point, but a serious loss of life. And I know that I'm paraphrasing, but and I also like Shike when you said we attack. We can relate to that in this dojo. Our teacher teaches us, if somebody moves towards you, you move towards them. You don't move to the side and you don't move back, you move towards them. I think one of the big things, Shike, that you said to me that stood out is it's not about the toughness of technique or the body as much as it is the toughness of the mind. Right? I can relate to that a lot. And I like to hear that. One of the things I really like, Shike, is that when you were asked who the most influential martial artist in your life was, you said your son. So I'm kind of circling back to the beginning. That's pretty cool. I like Sensei Lee that you said, if I was taken today, I'm happy, right? I'm happy with everything I've done and I don't have any regrets. And the last thing I'd say is, Shike, when you were talking about your greatest achievement, you said a number of things, but the one that really resonated with me basically boils down to your greatest achievement is the relationship that you had with your teacher. And I think that's amazing. And thank both of you so much for coming on here tonight. I learned so much. I'm going to be thinking so deeply about this conversation.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Sensei. Yeah, I don't have a child or a parent in the martial arts, but my dad and I do overlap with other professional aspects, and watching you two as well, it made me really privileged to be his son and to watch you two and think about my own relationship with my dad and how I get to sit and talk about literature and plays and theater, the thing he and I share. It's really heartwarming and it makes me deeply emotional. Yeah, kind of like Sensei Dolphin said at the beginning about not being glib with the blood sport. Like I just rewatched The Last Samurai and it reminded me how deeply I care about a path that a lot of people might not care about. And when we talk about what with the Menkyo Kaiden and how genuinely rare that is, the thing I kept thinking listening to the two of you is it matters because we make it matter. You know, when you're speaking, it matters to me. And it matters because you've made it matter and because we all choose for it to matter. What does it matter if I make a tea like shit? Well, it matters because I want to focus on it and give it the attention and divinity it deserves. And I want to thank you for this whole interview. It oozed through the screen from the moment you two showed up. I'll probably say it wrong, the Shino Kurai, the idea that this 400-year-old kata is your lesson for life. That for me is just goes back to that samurai idea, that Bushido. And then also, you know, I do want to apologize to the people who ask questions. We often will message each other behind the scenes and it's never disrespectful. It's always just, hey, make sure we get to this. Hey, make sure you ask them this. We are running a show here. Nobody fucking messaged anybody anything because we're just riveted. And it's a fact. And I see it in my sensei's eyes and Sensei Suino's eyes. And I just want to genuinely apologize because we didn't get to the questions because there was no point to shifting away from what we were talking about. And we just scratched the surface. And again, I do just want to say as well, toughness is a state of mind. All my challenges have been outside of the dojo of a life or death nature. And they have all been faced because of my time in the dojo and the toughness of mind that I've been given by my instructors and what they've asked me to do. So thanks for embodying that as a father and son on our show. Sensei Dauphin, can you, as I like to throw it to you, tell us about our upcoming weeks?
Ooh, well, I'm just going to talk about next week, and then people
Great.
will have to wait for that for after that, because it'll be next week, and then we'll take a week off. But next week we have Sensei Wally Slokey, who super stoked to talk to him. There's not many people that my sensei is a pretty prolific fighter, Hanshigiri Legacy. He's been a pretty prolific fighter in Canadian, North American, world history. But Sensei Wally Slokey is the person that he said, this guy's my hero. Like I patterned my fighting and what I wanted to do based on this person, and he taught me so much. And I guess I'll be so bold as to say that Sensei Wally Slokey is one of the people who helped to put Canadian martial arts on the map in a global way back in the 60s. You know, anybody who's anybody from that era all know him, respect him, and I can't wait to hear what he has to say when we talk next week.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Sensei. And then we just want to give the last word to our guests, Sensei Lee Masters and Shike Paul Masters.
Yeah, just thank you very much for the opportunity to come on here and spread a little love to the world.
I find, yes, thank you so much for your comments. I've got quite emotional when you were all summing up there. So yes, thank you so much for inviting us. It gives us an opportunity to talk about our Rugi, which obviously, as you've seen, we're passionate about. So thank you.
Thank you. And as always, we just want to thank our team behind the scenes at Punch Kick Choke Chat, Robert Schlumsky, Mike Russell, Victoria Feth, Justin Shea, Alden Adair, Andrei Sedyshev, who help us with social media, help keep the tech end running. We couldn't do the show without you. Good night, everybody. We'll see you next week. Be sure to log in early and please be safe.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Stay safe.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.